Derp, 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 derp. Chapter 8 of Date Takes a Village. Muffin call! Spike awoke with a slight groan. His muscles, sore and aching from yesterday, had stiffened and tightened unbearably overnight. There were books all around him, scattered in haphazard piles around the square, and a grey Pegasus grinning at him cheerfully as she flapped before his nose. He blinked and reared his neck back a little to focus on her. She tilted her head, one eye beaming at him, and the other eye beaming off to the library. Morning, Derpy, he mumbled. His throat was still quite sore. She waved a bundle of letters. Muffins for you, Spike. He frowned a little. He didn't normally get mail didn't normally get his mail the usual way. He had a far more convenient system. Who was sending him letters? Right, he rasped, pulling himself together and holding up a forepaw slowly. She deposited the letters into his talons with what he considered reckless abandon, almost skewering herself as she flopped forwards through the air. He snatched his forepaw back with a quick intake of breath, letters in his palm, and anxiously darted a look back to her. She saluted brightly, entirely unharmed. Thanks, he said, doubtfully. Then he thought of something. Hey, Derpy, are those protesters still camped in front of the town hall? She nodded, one eye glaring off at the library. They sure are. They've got signs and muffins and bedrolls and muffins and everything. Spike thought for a moment, heart singing. If those parents' ponies were still camped in front of the town hall, he'd find another way out to his lesson this afternoon, despite what Mackintosh and Rarity had said about not hiding anymore. He wasn't a sucker for punishment. He wasn't going to willingly sign up for abuse if he didn't have to. Well, see you muffin, Spike. Derpy's voice trailed. Oh, maybe she's like a smurf, and she just replaces words with muffin. Derpy's voice trailed behind her as she pinged through the deserted square like a pinball. Thanks, Derpy, he called back. See you muffin... I mean later. He shook his head with a small snort, and then began to study his bundle of letters. There were quite a few. Most were simply addressed to Spike, Ponyville Dragon, but one was addressed to Mr. Spike, C/O, I don't know what that means, maybe currently occupying Ponyville Square, Ponyville, and looked rather official. He was beginning to slit open the envelope with his pinky claw when he became aware of a light weight shifting into the hollow of his back. Twilight mumbled in her sleep and nuzzled her head against a green spine. Oh, yeah. He smiled slightly, lowering the letter. She'd woken up after their dragon ride with a burning curiosity, and denuded the entire library of every book referring to draconic culture, psychology, and history it possessed. Spike looked around at the stacks of books, and his smile became a grin. He had been in such a study frenzy that she hadn't even squeaked about leaving the books out all night. He carefully picked up Scales Before Their Eyes, an in-depth study on equine-dragon relations in the modern day, and tilted it sideways, watching the pages ruffle. Not a single picture in the whole thing. Twilight sure liked some dry and dusty stuff. The collected poetic works of Silverclaw sat beside Diseases of the Dragon, From Abated Heels to Zigzag Throat. The Encyclopedia Draconis, Volume 7, DRA to ERG, was held open at Dragons by the bulk of Misunderstood or Monster, Dragon Facts and Myths. Spike squinted closer at the spine of one red book, and flushed when he read, Big and Hot, a guide for maturing dragons. He shoved the embarrassing thing underneath Dragons in the Smoke, a memoir. Big and Hot? That's an interesting title. There were heaps and heaps of books. Boy, was he pleased he wasn't able to file them all away anymore. Twilight yawned loudly, and he felt her legs stretching out. Morning, he said quietly. She said in a muffled voice. He looked back at her, curled up again in the hollow between his shoulders. His shoulder blades. Territory and you. All the dragon needs to know. Was serving as her pillow. Her foreleg was firmly wrapped... Wait, does that mean they make dragons for books? Anyways, her foreleg was firmly wrapped over her eyes. It's too early. I've gotten used to it sleeping out here, he said. Early, she insisted. This is a turnaround, he chuckled. You are telling me that it's too early. She growled underneath her breath, her other forelimb wrapping around her head as well. Then she sat up abruptly, eyes wide. The books! You look like a purple and pink haystack, he sniggered. She scowled at him, but then it turned into a grimace as she looked around and took in the explosion of paper around them. I fell asleep, she winced. Will the dew have gotten into them? Do you think? Spike tilted his head. I'll dry 'em off if it has, he offered. It's the least I can do. How would she do that? She ran a hoof over her mane. Can you do that without burning them? I think so. I'm beginning to trust my fire a bit more. After yesterday, anyway. Really? Yeah, and if that doesn't work, we can always spread them on my side. He shifted a little. Twilight, are you okay if I stand? I am so stiff. I've just got to stretch. She looked a little startled. Oh, I didn't think of that. And here I am, getting using you as a great big heated bed. It's fine, he said sincerely. It's good, actually. I like that you stayed out here with me again. I've just got to get this kink out of my back before I go completely crazy. That rock was so heavy. Twilight carefully slid down his shoulders to the cobbles, her magic carting the book after her. Spike stood up as fast as possible, his joints creaking, and proceeded to stretch himself as thoroughly as he could. The pop of his bones made him groan in relief. Oh, much better, he croaked. Twilight was giving him an alarmed look. That sounded awful, she said. It's better, he said, with a pained smile. If you say so, she said. Hey, what are these? She had spotted the letters. Oh, that, Spike said hoarsely, as he arched like a cat, forelegs straight and shoulders hunched. Mail for me, got from Ditzy. I was gonna open it, but then I saw all the books. She picked up the official-looking envelope with a little frown. Mr. Spike, C.O., currently occupied, not sure, she muttered. Spike sat down on his haunches and took the letter from her delicately. She watched as he pulled the letter from the envelope with precise, cautious movements and smoothed it out on the pavement. You're getting really good with your claws, she said with admiration. Thanks, he replied modestly, but it's only a letter. Letters are easy. Is it big enough? She asked. I can enlarge it if you need it. I can make it out, he assured her, before squinting at it. It's from Just. About your egg? Yeah, listen to this. Spike began to read aloud. Dear Spike, hoping this finds you well, yada yada yada. Oh, here we go. We've discovered that your egg was acquired by the school for... He just totally skipped over... I feel bad for Just. Was acquired by the school for gifted unicorns, not as one of a clutch, but singly. It was donated 87 years ago by the estate of the famous unicorn explorer, Livingstone. Now they're going to have to chase him down. It was kept in a magical stasis in the school's trophy room for so long because of Dr. Stone's position as a famous alumnus of the school. It was only put forward for examination hatching at all because we had the RSPCD had managed to get laws put into practice inhibiting the import of dragon eggs for exam use, and it was the only one left. There's no mention of where Dr. Stone found your egg in the school's records. Spike trailed off. 87. 87. Yeah. Keep reading, Twilight said in a low voice. Spike glanced down at her and then peered back to the letter. Perhaps you could try Livingstone's travel journals, he finished weakly. Twilight bolted for the library immediately. Spike sat back, his eyes staring at the piece of paper, but not really seeing it. Was his egg really so very old before it hatched? It made him actually, well, old. Quite old. A very, very old child. Twilight came charging back out of the library, and all tangled mane and determination, her horn surrounded by a corona of magic, and yet another book trailing through the air after her. She sat directly before him, and immediately buried her face in it. It's the right one, she crowed. Spike flinched as a cloud of dust... She just grabbed a random one. As a cloud of dust arose from the thin yellow book entitled, Dr. Livingstone, I presumed. The Journals and Recollections of an Adventurer and Dragon Slayer. He never allowed to get it so dusty. Perhaps he should have had a word with Owlicious. I know I read something once. There was an egg and a purple, she muttered underneath her breath, flipping pages rapidly. Where is it? Where is it? No, that's not... Aha! This is it! November 21st, she read aloud in a rushed voice. Did they say November in the series? Because I've been seeing November a lot. Before raising her eyes and giving him a significant look. Almost exactly 120 years ago. His mouth was dry with as ashes. Fuck. I hear things at night when I'm doing a read. Because I don't want my parents to find me. That would not be too good. She turned back to the old dusty memoir, her voice slowing as she read. Biavwucht? Biv out act. What does that mean? Biv out act. Down on the side of Smolberg Mountain, flushed out of a spiffing young dragoness, purple with pink markings. Lost 7 porters. Lovely little fight. Purple dragon claw will look rather jolly over the mantelpiece. By the end of the entry, she was almost whispering. She stared at the yellowed old pages. I read that years ago, she said blankly. You were teething, sleeping there in your little basket, and I didn't make the connections. I never thought that it might be... Purple dragoness? Spike rasped. His stomach had dropped through his feet, and ice was closing about his mind. Purple with pink markings, Twilight said, her normally bright voice still muted. Spike began in a dead-flat voice. That was... He killed your mother, she said. He killed her. Just like that. She killed all those porters, he said hollowly. She killed 2. What happened next? Twilight swallowed hard, searching his face with worry in her deep purple eyes. Okay. And then turned back to the journal. November 23rd, she read, her voice limping through the words. Found dragoness clutch. 3 eggs. Down 7 porters thanks to the dratted beast. Can't carry all the damn things back. Got 1 trophy anyway. Purple spotted affair. A real beauty. Others will die without their dams fire. I wonder if Razorfang is his brother. That was a pretty random conclusion. Can't carry all of the damn things back. Got a trophy anyway. Others will die without their dams fire to warn them. Oh, maybe not. Bloody waste. Head porter Zephyr got angry about the whole Bali business. Nasty row after dinners. Twilight faltered and stopped. There was a long, painful silence. It was something he'd always wondered about, if only a little. He'd never known if he truly wanted the answer. Still, he'd always thought he'd feel something if it one day presented itself. He was sure he was supposed to feel more than just empty. It was like he was encased in ice. So that's how I came to Equestria, he said, still in that horrible dead voice that didn't seem to come from inside his body. A dragon slayer killed my mother, stole my egg, and left my other siblings to die. Spike, Twilight said wretchedly. He jerked his head up, trying to come to terms with the hugeness of that awfulness. His throat felt like it was studded with thorns. Well, I was right about one thing, he muttered. Twilight put a hoof on his paw, and he resisted the urge to jerk it away. What? She asked softly. I didn't want to know, he said, and closed his eyes as tightly as he could. Spike, I'm so sorry, Twilight said helplessly. He nodded his head and took in a giant shuddering breath. It's all done with, he said in a toneless voice. Then he snorted. It was done with 120 years ago. Does this... He finally glanced down. She was gazing up at him, her lip trembling, and her pupils huge in sympathy and worry. The sight of her almost cracked that icy shell that had formed about him. Does this, Twilight repeated, her ears drooping, change anything? He stared down at her, unseeing for a long moment. Then the previous day washed over him in a flood of warmth, and the ice melted. No, he said. No, it doesn't change a thing. So what if I don't have another family out there? That's okay. You're my family anyway. You and the pony gang. She gave a tremulous smile. Are you going to be all right? He considered that, and then his eyelids pressed closed once more. Yeah, I'll be fine. Not yet, but I will be. Her hoof rubbed the back of his claw in slow, tender circles. "I'm here," she said. To his relief, he didn't want to pull away any more, and when he spoke, he sounded like himself again. "I know," he replied. "Is that letter still there?" She glanced over it. "Had you finished it? I mean, even if you hadn't, did you want to?" "Not really," he said reluctantly. "Maybe I can." "Be my guest," he snorted, and lowered himself down to rest his head on his forepaws. She levitated the letter over, even as she stroked his fins comfortingly. "Let's see," she said, looking at the letter with an expression of mixed anger, distaste, and sadness. "We were around here. No, you read that part. Here we are. He writes that the recordings regarding Huffy are far more detailed. Her dam was the dragon of the cindery catacombs, and her sire was the dragon of the Tanglevine forest. Hers was one of 4 eggs in a clutch. Their dam abandoned them after her mate left her to return to his territory." "Whoa!" Spike said, taken aback. "Do dragonesses often abandon a clutch?" "Quite often," Twilight sighed. "Once the eggs are laid, the male starts to feel the pull back to his own territory. For the female, this is bad news. Given how possessive they are, it can be a toss-up between trying to keep their mate or keeping the eggs. If the mate wins the toss, the dragoness will chase him, and her eggs will die without her fire to keep them warm." Spike frowned. "That sounds awful." "Evolutionarily, it's not all that great either," Twilight added, her critical scholar's expression in place. "How is it not that great evolutionarily?" "You lie! You lie!" If anyone disagrees with me, I would love to start a discussion about that in the comments or something. Steam. "Well, now, I know why the world isn't overrun by dragons," Spike said tartly. See? Better for the ecosystem. Less predators." I'm sorry. She leaned her head against him. "Spike, seriously," she said. "Are you going to be all right? That was quite a shocking piece of news." He dropped his gaze. Look, I'll think about it, but I meant it what I said before. Nothing's changed." Her madly tangled mane swung as she shook her head. "Something's changed, Spike. You know now that your mother was a dragoness of Smolderberg Mountain, and that she was purple and pink. You know you were laid 120 years ago, and that she died the same year. You know you had 2 siblings. You know that when Living Stone died, your egg was donated to the school by his estate's executors, and it stayed there in the trophy room until my exam." He stared at the yellow journal with anger and bitterness flicking in his heart. "I suppose." "There's another thing, too," Twilight added in a softer voice. "You know you are wanted very much." He frowned. "I do?" She smiled faintly. "Only one dragon defended that nest. There's no mention of a mate living in Stone's journal. That means your sire had already left for his home, but your mother was still there with your egg. Wasn't she?" Spike raised his head a little, his eyes lighting up. Oh yeah. She mustn't have followed him. So the eggs were more important. Important even in the egg." She nudged the side of his face. "Well, I don't like to brag," he said, with a fair attempt at his usual faux modest, humorous tone. The strain in his face and voice must have been apparent, because Twilight's expression told him that he wasn't fooling any pony. Still, she decided to let it slide, and looked back at the rest of her letters. "Have you looked at those yet?" "After the first one, I'm a little leery," Spike said wryly. She laughed shortly in agreement. "I can understand that. There's caps lower down the page," she agreed. So I'm distracted. "Let's get it over with." Most of the letters were horrible. It took all of Spike's willpower not to go spiraling back down into the dumps again. "You should have been scrambled," one blared, in scratchy hoof-writing. "How dare you live near our folds and bring such dangers to our homes," another shrieked. "I hopes that you get dead in the challenge. Dragons not belong with ponies. You should die or fly away to dragons. Live and not be with ponies any more," read Spike's particular favorite. "You are a pathetic dragon. A dragon wanting to be a pony," sneered yet another. "If that dragon does not kill you, I will do it myself, you aberration," was the worst. the words pasted together with letters cut from magazines and newspapers. They glared at him ominously. Oh, that's creepy! If you actually... Whoa! He was ready to immolate the lot in disgust and fury without opening the last few, when Twilight handed him another another with a small smile on her face. "Read that," she said. He gave her a suspicious look and bent to read it. "You are a true inspiration, Spike, and if we could meet, Spike, I would shake your claw." He looked up, face clearing. "That's a nice change of pace." "Here's another." Twilight passed another... Was she just saving up the good ones? Twilight passed another letter over to him as his jaw dropped slackly as he read it. "I think you're amazing, Spike. Mr. Spike. And so does my mom and dad. We think you're really brave. And I think you're really cool." It's funny because all the yours are Y-O-R-E. "And I want to be a dragon when I grow up." Or a dragon. Because it's spelt wrong. Oh, that's so cute. All this spelt wrong stuff. Especially that weird thing where it's "I hopes that you get dead," and dead has only an E and no A. And whatever. That's long gone. Twilight passed him the last letter silently. It took an equal silence, and read, "Don't give up, Spike, our little friend, who is not so little anymore. We are rooting for you. Signed, the Canterlot Palace Guards." That's nice. Twilight looked down at the envelope for a moment before looking back up at him. "Good morning to you, Spike," she said, and gave him a crooked smile. He smiled back ironically. "Are all our mornings going to be like this now?" Oof! The air was suddenly expressed out of him as he shunted the basalt block from his back with a now practiced heave. It thudded on top of its fellows. He nudged it into position with his nose, and then stepped back to view the neat row proudly. A huge square of gray stones, 2 blocks high, now nestled in the foundation trenches he dug. A gap in the square indicated where the door was going to be. "Rarity on standby," Pinkie Pie barked, her hard hat in place. Rarity looked up from filling her hooves. "Spike's got to fire that block," Applebloom said, frowning, as she studied the plans. "Pinkie, can you look at this for a moment?" "Oh, of course. Safety. Oh, wait, no, this is Rarity." "Oh, of course. Safety, indeed." Rarity's hoof file flew into her saddlebag with a flash of her horn, and she stood to look expectantly over at Spike. "Ready?" How did I lose my place? Spike gave her an adoring smile. "I'm always ready for you, my lady." Whoa, then, he said dreamily. Her lips twitched, and he abruptly realized he'd spoken aloud. He hid his burning face as Pinkie turned back to him. "Spike," she said impressively, "you may fire that block." Spike began to draw in his breath, even as Pinkie, Rarity, and Applebloom, and Big Macintosh lowered their safety goggles in front of their eyes. When he was trembling full of air, he blasted the cube with that furious, invisible fire for as long as he was able. It began to glow dully where the flame touched it. "Keep going!" Spike dragged in another breath, and fired at the stone's other facets. After the flame had passed, the basalt had become black and charred, almost shiny-looking. When the whole cube had been treated, he let the fire stutter to a halt. It flickered into wavering green before petering out, and he swallowed against his dry throat. "And that's the foundations finished!" Pinkie Pie crowed, her hooves up in the air. "Well done, every pony! I say this calls for a party!" "Sure does," Applebloom agreed. I have flying lessons this afternoon," Spike said. Pinkie seemed to deflate on the spot before rapidly inflating. "Okie dokie Loki, we'll have it for tomorrow. How does Sunnybank Park sound to every pony? I'm bringing the cake." Spike looked up around at Big Macintosh, Applebloom, Pinkie, and Rarity. "Sounds good to me," he shrugged. The others made similar noises of agreement. "Oh, that's so exciting!" Pinkie squealed. "I can't wait to get started on the food and the decorations and the balloons and the streamers and the pranks and the punch and the games and the music. Oh, I've just got to run home and tell Gummy right now." She began to rush off before seemingly stopping in midair. "Hang on, we need more ponies for a proper Pinkie Pie party," she exclaimed, curls snapping back from the interrupted velocity. "Well, darling, why not simply invite more ponies?" Rarity said, rolling her eyes. "Oh my goodness, that is such a superly amazing, awesomely good idea!" Pinky said, blue eyes huge with excitement. I'll invite Twilight, and Applejack, and Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash, and Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo, and... Oh, hi, Zecora. Want to come to a party? Zecora. Interesting. Spike's head whipped around to see the zebra shaman smiling at them all, her saddle baskets overflowing with strange-looking plants. Hello there, Pinkie Pie, my dear, she said, in a warm, smooth voice. And what is it that brings you here? Wait. Yes. We're helping Spike build his house, Pinky said brightly. I'm Four-Pony, and Big Macintosh is second in charge today, and Applebloom is on technical, and Rarity's on safety, 'cause you need a unicorn on safety, and Spike is doing the building. I'm the grunt, Spike said dryly. Oh, now I see the size of it. I'm sorry if my Zecora voice is terrible, but I don't know. I'm not good, Zecora said, eyebrows rising as she took in the huge, low basalt square. A house where a dragon can fit. That's the idea, Pinky beamed. Or, that's the idea. Anyway, we just finished the foundations, and I said this calls for a party, and Applebloom agreed with me, which I thought was so fantastically terrific that I started making plans right there for a party in Sunnybank thing. And then Spike said he had a flying lesson this afternoon, and I said how about tomorrow, and every pony can come tomorrow, and I sure hope you can too. You collecting herbs again, Zecora? Applebloom asked, as Pinky tried to catch her breath. Young Applebloom, you are correct. These herbs and berries I collect, Zecora nodded. Why don't she ever just say, yup? Big Macintosh whispered to Spike. He shrugged. So will you come? Huh? Pinky leaned to the very tips of her front hooves, her face inches away from Zecora's. I'm sure I'll have a lot of fun, so I will very gladly come, Zecora told Pinky, smiling. The party pony gave a great gasp of joy before she zipped away in a streak of pink lightning. Pink lightning! That's awesome. Her party hard rat rattled to the ground seconds later. Zecora turned puzzled eyes on them. That response seems oh so strong. I hope I have done nothing wrong. Oh, she's just being Pinkie Pie, Spike said with amused resignation. She's always like that, dear, Rarity said with a lovely smile. Spike stifled a longing sigh. Oh, Zecora, I've been meaning to ask you something for ever such a long time. Do tell me, have you ever thought of growing your mane long? I have this must be Rarity. Oh, this has to be Rarity, 'cause it's just Rarity, you know. Oh, Zecora, I've been meaning to ask you something for ever such a long time. Do tell me, have you ever thought of growing your mane long? I have this new hat design. I can't pull it off, but darling, it would be simply to die for. Zecora's eyes twinkled. You are too kind, sweet Rarity, but my mane is long as it can be. Oh, Rarity pouted, and I was so hoping to try it out on you. Does it require a longer mane? With short, will it not work the same? Rarity pursed her lips. Maybe. That was weird. Maybe. Okay. Do you still have that nightmare night wig? Applebloom asked. Zecora rubbed her chin with a hoof. I think I can dig it out, she said doubtfully. It's somewhere in my house, no doubt. Oh, could you please? Rarity batted her eyelashes pleadingly. And would you consider posing in my hat for the brochure for the upcoming summer collection? With such a flattering request, my only answer can be yes. Zecora smiled. Yes, Rarity crowed, before toning it down to ladylike levels again. Oh, thank you so much, Zecora. It is going to be marvelous. Rarity continued to speak excitedly to herself, lost in her own world, as she began to trot briskly back to the village. So thrilling, and those stripes. Oh, idea! I absolutely must try a striped gown, so perfect for summer. She seemed to realize that she was leaving them behind, and turned back to call. I'll see you all tomorrow, then. Creative frenzy, Spike explained, as Rarity hurried off. And that is why I like Luna. That was random, I'm sorry, but anyways. She gets them a lot, Sweetie says. Applebloom nodded sagely. Zecora, Spike said, and then, a little shyly, she held up a hoof to stop him. I know what you are going to say, she said gently. No doubt you'll say it anyway. But let me first say this, my friend. I will support you to the end. Spike blinked. But why? I mean, you don't know me that well at all. No offense, Zecora, and yet you were there in the square the other day, supporting me. And yeah, I was going to say thank you so much for that, but... She tripped her regal head, golden neckbands clinking. I think you are forgetting that I once was shunned and whispered at. I too have had my share of stares, and rumors foul were once my cares. I know what it is like to be a dreaded curiosity. Spike ducked his chin. Oh, he said, subdued. I remember. You thought zombie films. Zecora eyed him shrewdly. I am amazed you recall that, she said. You were an infant, small and fat. Hey, he said indignantly. Applebloom hid a snicker, and Macintosh emitted a very, very quiet, yup. I think what she's trying to say is that you look a whole heap different now, Applebloom said, a grin tugging the corner of her mouth. Spike sat down petulantly. What? I wasn't that fat, he grumbled. You weren't skinny, Macintosh said. Well, how skinny were you as a baby? Spike challenged. He was a great big apple pudding of a foe, if Granny's pictures are to be believed, Applebloom said, wickedly. Her brother gave her a very warning look. One more word out of you, Bloom, and I'll bring out your full pictures next time we got company, even the ones in the barn on the hay bales. Spike's eyes widened as Zecora leaned closer as Applebloom flushed the color of nectarine. Oh, this sounds good, Spike said with relish. Oh, don't hold back on your account. This tale you surely must recount. Okay, then, Zecora grinned at her young friend. Applebloom cleared her throat. I think Zecora's trying to say that you're looking pretty fit and sharp these days, Spike, she said diplomatically. Spike glanced down before dismissing himself. I got big. It happens. Well, yeah, but you got skinner first, 'cause you grew up too fast, Macintosh remembered. I remember thinking, how could some pony so danged big and be so danged big and strong? So danged big and strong, be so scrawny. Back when you first came out of that there library, you had that stretch sort of look some of our fillies and colts get when they hit a growth spurt. You're taking on more muscle now. Spike looked back down at himself. Maybe his chest did look deeper. I am? Macintosh nodded leisurely, chewing his haystack. You're a whole heap stronger than you were when you had that first lesson, he said, in his deep, easy drawl. But you control it better now that you've done a bit of work on it. Surprised and pleased, Spike smiled at the farm pony. Wow, thanks, Macintosh. Don't you go thinking that means you can relax now, Macintosh warned him. No, sir, Spike saluted, sharply, still smiling. Come on, Bloom, gotta get back to the farm. Macintosh nudged her. Gotta get started on them pies for Rainbow Dash's friend. That was an interesting comment. Applebloom rolled her eyes. I ain't ever seen a pony who likes pie so much. He's no slouch at the dinner table, agreed Macintosh. Be seeing you later, Spike, Miss Zecora. That is definitely going to come up later, this whole Rainbow Dash thing. See ya, Spike said as they turned back towards the town. I hope to see you very soon, Big Macintosh and Applebloom, Zecora said. Spike turned back to his house, studying the foundations with pride. It looks good, doesn't it? He said happily. I did those blocks myself, you know. You should be very pleased indeed, Zecora nodded as she looked over his hard work. It looks to be all you will need. Well, it will once we've got a bit further than the foundations, Spike allowed. Then he grimaced, and put a roof on it, and a door, and some walls might come in handy at some point. There is a great deal left to do, agreed the zebra, but your good friends are helping you. I'd be a mess without them, he sighed. It's all gotten a bit crazy lately. Lessons and protests and dragon stuff and interviews and fan mail and hate mail and all. They're sort of holding me together right now. I cannot say I understand, she said, and touched his forepaw with a kind hoof. I am not a dragon in Ponyland, but I do surely sympathize, and I do think your friends are wise. Okay, sorry, that just sounded weird. Yeah, Spike said heavily. They're amazing. They're all behind me 100%. They've been just so supportive, especially Twilight. I think I'd be in pieces if it wasn't for her. Like this morning, he paused. His mother, his egg, Dr. Stone. He threw the thought away violently. He didn't want to think about it. Don't. You must be strong, my young dragon, Zecora said, eye serious. This thorny path you walk upon is not a road for the faint-hearted. Oh! You must be strong, my young dragon. That was a weird rhyme. This thorny path you walk upon is not a road for the faint-hearted, but you must finish what you've started. I know. Spike looked back at the foundations of his house and steeled himself. I mean to. She gave him a compassionate look. Ah, you are still so very young, with such challenges yet to come. He winced. You heard about that, I see. She nodded. The great dragon lives not far from me, and all his movements I do see. He often leaves his smoky cave, and watches as your way you pave. Spike growled. Great! Razorfang is spying on me. That's just great. Now I can add a dragon to my stalker list, along with fanfillies, reporters, photographers, and anti-dragon nutcases. I think he only wants to see. Perhaps you are a novelty. Oh, goody! Spike closed his eyes and pinched the bridge out of his snout between two claws. Then his eyes flew wide open as a wild idea occurred to him. It is late. And I apologize for my bad reading. I'm reading slower, less character. I'm pausing. Like right now, I'm going off track, so I should... Fuck. Zecora! Oh, horse apples! Why didn't I think of this before? Zecora, could you please brew up something for me? Something to make me bigger or stronger, or fireproof even. Please? She shook her head reluctantly, and the wild hope died in his chest, as she said, No medicine or healing brew can have any effect on you. Your constitution's far too tough. A dragon's made of sterner stuff. He wilted. Well, it was worth a shot, he mumbled in disappointment. I only wish I could do more, Zecora said apologetically. There is so much for you in store. Tell me about it, he grabbed to himself. You have your friends to set you right, she said, and they will see you through this fight. My friends, he mumbled, and then straightened his shoulders. Yeah, my friends. You know, I've got another flying lesson with Rainbow Dash this afternoon. She just won't give up. Big Macintosh has been helping me control my strength. Oh. I didn't really know him before, and he's a real good friend now. Fluttershy and Applejack helped me with my fire, and it's so much better. Zecora, no pony'd believe it. Pinky, Twilight, and Rarity helped me design my house. Rarity made me a scarf, and Pinky's got so many awesome ideas. And Twilight... He stomped, emotional sport, his heart clenching, and then he continued in a slower voice. They're all helping with my house, too. It's amazing. No dragon ever had better friends. I'm really lucky, even if everything is messy and complicated and occasionally completely and totally awful. Zecora regarded him for a long moment, her expression unfathomable. Then she spoke. Her voice was distant and far away. It almost sounded like she was chanting. There is a saying from my home. It not matters how far I roam. I see the proof of it each day, in every small essential way. Young dragon, how it so fits you, and all the trials you now go through. Then she leaned forward, her dark eyes boring into him. No matter how different, and strange or wild, it takes a village to raise a child. Spike stared at her, flummoxed by her sudden change of demeanor. Zecora? That was an awesome tie into the title. She gave him a small smile. I too will be there for you, and I will help you see it through. He wasn't able to muster any words, but stared blankly down at the zebra. She turned and began to make her way through the field to the ever-free forest path. I will be seeing you again, she said serenely, at Pinky's party in the glen. Oh, it's at Sunnybank Park, Spike said, still rather flummoxed. Zecora threw an arc look back over her shoulder. That doesn't rhyme. Which is funny, because she just didn't rhyme, and it's late, so I'm pointing out the obvious. Next part. Swing a little to the left. Applejack hollered from the ground. Easy for you to say, Rainbow Dash yelled back, the rope around her waist zipping and snapping in the strong wind. Whoa, Spitfire's here. My mama didn't bring me up to be a tugboat, Spitfire groused. I don't know Spitfire's voice. I'm just gonna go with it. Spike was frozen stiff in terror, his wings locked and outstretched. Attached to him by guide ropes around his chest were Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash, Scootaloo, Spitfire, and Soren. The Pegasi were dragging him through the air like some sort of giant scaled carriage. Taking a balloon for a walk, she says, grunted Scootaloo, flapping valiantly to try and steer his unwieldy frame. Below them, Applejack and Wyona ran frantically, calling instruction to his handlers. Yeah, right, a balloon that weighs a ton. I am pretty sure I weigh more than that, Spike said through gritted fangs. Now he tells us, Soren sniped. Whose crazy idea was this? Hey, who are you calling crazy? Dash snapped at her teammate. Oh, right, she's on the Wonderbolts, isn't she? I totes forgot that. And he rolled his eyes before pulling against his rope once more. I'd really appreciate it if we could get down soon, Spike said in a strangled voice. No way, Jose, Dash gritted, straining on her rope. You are gonna fly today! Oh, look at that. I'm flying now. Now can I please get down? Spike garbled. You're gliding, Spitfire corrected him shortly, sweat running down her golden face as she towed him. We're the ones that are doing the heavy wing work. There had better be a pie after this, Soren muttered. I'm only in this for the pie. Oh, pony feathers, swore Dash, as Spike's wing banked a little against the wind once more, and he began to veer to the right again. Fluttershy, could you give me a hoof here? Fluttershy flew as hard as she could to the left to bring him straight. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, she puffed. Okay, he's straight again, Applejack yelled from far below. Wyona barked enthusiastically. Guys, I don't like this, Spike moaned. The ground was quite a long way away, and he felt powerless and vulnerable being dragged along like a massive kite. Tough, Dash puffed. Oh, holy horse feathers, he's got a lot of side, wheezed Spitfire. What does that mean? Spike asked. His whole body was rigid with fear and trepidation. It means you move a lot of air, Scootaloo said, her mane plastered to her forehead with sweat. Your wings displace a massive amount compared to ours. That's why it's so scootin' hard to keep you straight in a crosswind like this. So scootin' hard. Then maybe we should fly into it, Spike said in a strained voice. His wings were burning in their outstretched position, but he didn't dare move a single muscle. And turn you into a crusty as big as parachute? Spitfire asked sarcastically. Don't you know anything about wing resistance? Leave off, SF. ESF? 'Cause she's Spitfire. Why is it ESF? Is that her nickname? I'm confused. Okay, calm down. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Just read. Rainbow Dash growled. Sorry, Dash, Spike whispered hoarsely. Next time, remember what I tell you, huh? She hissed back. Especially in front of my captain? He cringed internally. Well, it's a bit weird, huffed Soren. A dragon who won't fly. It's not won't, Rainbow Dash said, flapping violently. It's can't, Fluttershy said, her face apologetically. I just can't get the hang of it, Spike said. But, sorry, I guess that makes me a little weird. You've got the gliding part down, Scootaloo said encouragingly, hauling on her rope. Yay! Fluttershy cheered as much as she could. Yeah, yay, Spike said, with tight irony. Gliding. Wow. Oh, I've got so much more to read. It's an improvement on swimming, Dash managed pointedly. He had to give her that one. Let's try something, Spike, Rainbow Dash said then. Can you feel that crosswind? Spike could definitely feel the leading edge of pressure against the front ridges of his wings. Yeah. Next time you feel that wing wanting to bank against the air, do it, she puffed. I don't know if that's such a great idea, Rainbow, Spike said in a strangled tone. Gotta try sometime, she said. You're all attached to me. Spike said, his voice quite a lot higher than normal. "If I lose it, we all go down." "You're not going to lose it by banking on a crosswind," Dash snapped. "But do it!" Spike stifled a whimper and leaned into the wind carefully. "Turning right, every pony!" Rainbow Dash hollered as he began to veer around in a broad circle. "Oh my gosh!" Spike moaned, as the ground span strangely below him. "Whoa, relax, Spike." "Chill, dog," Scootaloo said, taken aback. You wouldn't have to say that if you'd hit the ground as many times as I had," Spike hollered back over the ripping sound of his wings tearing through the air. "You're doing it, Spike!" "You're doing it, Spike," Fluttershy said. "That was a perfect turn." "You can straighten up now," Spitfire said, unimpressed. Spike was certainly grateful that Dash had brought in her wonderful teammates to help him, but boy, were they making him feel hopelessly inept. Which he supposed he was, but it wasn't nice to point it out like that. Then again, he'd once stuffed them inside a water tower, so perhaps they were just getting a bit of their own back. Was that from the episode where he was big or something? I don't remember that. He shifted his weight between his wings until he was flying level again, and Dash nodded to him, her face shining with sweat. "You think you can remember that when you go broadside again?" she puffed. He nodded meekly. "You're doing very well," Fluttershy managed between her wing beats. "It took me a lot far longer to learn, you know." "I feel ridiculous," he replied, changing his word choice at the last minute. He didn't want to admit how helpless and defenseless he felt in front of Spitfire and Soren. The wind tried to turn him, but he mimicked his earlier motions and remained straight. "Now you got it," Scootaloo said triumphantly. "Now you—" A sudden updrift sent him shooting higher and higher into the air, his wings locked in terror. For a moment all 5 ponies were dangling breathlessly at the ends of their ropes. Then Rainbow Dash reacted faster than thought, followed by the other 2 Wonderbolts a second later. They started to try and haul him across the sky, across the updraft. Scootaloo shook her head to clear it before joining in. Fluttershy seemed to have been dazed by the sudden jerk upwards, and she swung at the end of the rope like a pendulum. "It's no good," Soren said over the tearing wind. He's got too much air. We can't get him on the updraft." "Pull!" Dash howled. The 4 ponies pulled with all their might. Spike eyed the ground that was still slipping further and further away with horrified dismay. "It's not working!" hollered Scootaloo. "Come on!" Rainbow Dash bit, her wings a blue blur. Spike's pupils were pinpricks of fear as he watched the little shapes of Applejack and Wyona growing smaller and smaller. The howl of the wind steadily rose in a pitch and volume as they continued to rise and rise and rise. "This column's got to taper eventually," screamed Spitfire. "We'll pull him off the top of it." "I'm gonna be a crater," Spike choked to himself. Then out of the corner of his wide-blown eyes he glimpsed a yellow and plink and pink blur begin to turn and roll. Fluttershy, still barely conscious, was being spun out of her rope. The knots must have loosened when she was jerked to the end of it by their sudden ascent. "Rainbow Dash!" he howled. She couldn't hear him over the scream of the wind, her whole body straining, all her attention getting him off the updraft. He looked over in a panic at Scootaloo and Soren, who were in a similar state. Spitfire looked like she was snarling, her strain was so apparent. He desperately turned from one to the next, yelling their names. It was no good. They were all yelling at each other, but no pony could hear any more. With a cold, sick shock, Spike realized that he was the only one who had noticed Fluttershy's situation. With almost balletic grace, she slid out of the rope entirely, her mane and tail trailing gracefully as she began to free-fall through the air. Spike's vision seemed to tunnel in on her, unfocused aqua eyes, her feeble, twitching wings, her lolling neck. A memory broke. "My pony," he had told her, and he'd stuck out his tongue. She had giggled. Flames filled his eyes once more. "Fluttershy!" he suddenly roared in a huge gush of smoke. Without even stopping to consider how, he swept his wings once more and ducked his head under the hooves of the ponies still valiantly trying to drag him from the updraft. 4 very, very startled Pegasi clattered against his back, their forelegs clamping to his shoulders and spines, holding on reflexively. "Spike?" Dash gasped in his ear. He growled fiercely, his forelegs slammed down tight against his underside as he arched himself downwards, his wings flattened against his body, his snout and neck elongating slightly as he sped straight as an arrow for Fluttershy's tumbling form. "Look! It's Fluttershy!" shrieked Scootaloo. "We gotta save her!" gasped Spitfire. "We're still tied to Spike!" screeched Dash. "I'm gonna get her!" Spike roared. "You're gonna kill us!" Spitfire howled. "I only wanted some pie!" Spike ignored them all, his eyes fixed on Fluttershy. His vision had seemingly sharpened under pressure, and he could see every feather in her wings, every strand of her mane. Sounds like ADHD. "She's getting closer!" Dash gasped. "So's the ground!" Spitfire yelled angrily. Spike opened his wings as he drew level with Fluttershy's tumbling form, and the updraft caught him immediately, throwing him skywards once more. He growled as Fluttershy dropped away from him sharply and plunged headlong after her into a vertical dive, wings snapping against his sides. His whole body plummeted like a missile after his friend. "Listen to me!" Dash grabbed the fins at his jaw and yelled directly into his ear. "You're going to have to dive across the draft, aim right at Fluttershy, and catch her in your claws." He shook his head in horror. He'd hurt her for sure, and with that spastic agitation thrumming through his whole body, his mind in flames. "You're telling me that you can pick up an egg with those claws, but you can't save Fluttershy?" Dash screamed at him. Spike's eyes narrowed. Arching himself one more, he swooped neatly into the updraft in a smooth arc, and grabbed Fluttershy with one foreclaw. It was fast and simple, as a swallow plucking an insect from the air. Every pony gasped silently as he sped on through the updraft, his wings still pressed to his sides, cutting through the air as true as a thrown spear. It had all happened so fast. Spike began to emerge from his furious fog, and the fear started creeping back into the corners of his mind. What in Celestia's name did he think he was doing? A few dragon lengths later, the air pressure dropped dramatically. Unfortunately, so did they. "Okay, you're past it! Open your wings and flap!" gabbled Spitfire. "Updraft's gone," Soren bubbled. "We're a pancake." "Spike, spread him!" Dash hollered. He wrenched his wings open again. Something deep inside him urged him to beat them twice, and so he did. His chest rhythmically moved in the reverse direction. "Oh my gosh," Dash breathed. He beat his wings again, even as his neck extended to its full length once more, and 3 of his limbs flattened against his body tightly, the other cradling Fluttershy close to his chest. Said Soren suddenly. Shockingly peaceful silence. "What was that?" "Spike! Spike, you're flying!" said Scootaloo in a strangled voice. "Don't make me think about it, or I'm gonna lose it," he said, just as he strained. He brought the claw that was holding Fluttershy's limp form before his eyes, fearing that he was going to see blood. To his dumbfounded joy, she was whole. Even better, she was stirring. "I didn't cut her in two. It's all good." She regarded him blurrily. "You're not a butterfly," she mumbled, eyes puzzled. He could feel a foolish, elated smile beginning to crease his face. "Nope," he agreed goofily, "but I can fly, Fluttershy. I can fly." She blinked, smiling back vaguely. "Silly little friend, of course dragons can fly," she said. Spike held her against him, his heart racing at the thought of losing her like that. He beat his wings again without thinking, and the extra momentum that carried them across a downdraft without a bump. Part of his mind was now gibbering madly in fright, but most of it was strangely numb after the heart-stopping panic and red-tinted rage of the previous minutes. "She's okay?" Spitfire asked, an apology in her tone. Spike beat his wings and nodded. It made his whole body swim strangely through the air. "Oh, don't. I'll be airsick," Soren said in a green voice. "You get airsick?" Scootaloo said, flatly disbelieving. "There's a difference between being a pilot and a passenger," he said defensively. Rainbow Dash leaned down to his ear once more. "That," she said quietly, "was truly awesome. And for the record, I knew you could do it." "I don't know how I'm doing it," he answered, flustered, and elated, and numb all at once. "I wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth if I were you," she snorted, before rubbing his head with affection. "One question Yes. How do I land? End of that chapter. I am sorry that my reading got terrible at the end, but it's just well, see, it's really late, so it just got bad, and I'm sorry. And see, I'm stuttering, and then my reads got bad, and my voices got worse. Duh. Okay, I'm reading the comments, and the comments are cool. Good night, my someone. Good night.